Hello there. This is the first in several videos I'm going to be shooting today. This is going to be a first look at some of the new sword, well, one of the new swords that I've had come in quite recently. This particular sword is by Kvetun in Russia, and it's a Swiss Sabre that I asked to be made. So it was a custom sort of one-off sword. It was made to match the specifications of an original in the Wallace Collection, but with one subtle difference. I actually wanted this one modified for sparring. So I know a lot of you will be thinking, why would you go and get such a complicated and nice looking sword and then use it for sparring? Or I'm more of the opinion of why would you have that and not have it for sparring? I don't like having swords on the wall, personally, unless they're originals. If they're originals, they can go on the wall, they're part of a collection. If they're reproductions, I want to be able to use them. And being as I'm not some kind of crazy psycho running around attacking people with sharp swords, I'm going to be using them for sparring and for drill, in which case I need a blunt sword. Now this sword, it didn't actually take as long as I thought. I'll need to double check on quite how long, but it was a matter of months. I've had commissions before that have gone on for a year or a year and a half. They've just dragged on forever. And this sword, I had communication right from the start. They checked on the dimensions to make sure it would work with my hands, and to make sure it would work with sort of gloves that I wanted to use. So I specified what I was expecting to be using, and then they made it and shipped it quite recently. I have posted up photos already on the AHF Facebook page, so you may have seen that already. And I will just turn around and actually grab it now. Okay, I had to cut the footage there because there was a little more effort to get the sword from my sword rack than I was expecting. Because the complex hilts, well, because they're complex, when you overlap them on a sword rack, they all kind of merge together into one great sort of conglomeration of steel and cross and guard. But I managed to get it free anyway. Now let's just show you the sword. You don't really want, the talking is fine, but let's actually see the thing. So I'll just bring it up. Okay, so I'll try and keep it in focus. So I'm just going to show you some shots first, and then I'll go into details afterwards. So let's start with the pommel. Now, if after watching this video you want any more footage or photos of specifics of the sword, let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to get some more footage and photos. Because I know sometimes when you want to get something commissioned, or you're thinking about it or doing some research, and you can never quite get the angles and the photos that you really wanted. So just let me know, don't be afraid to ask. I'm quite happy to get more for you. So you can see it is a complex and very pretty bit of complex hand protection. The pommel, you can see, look at the detail on it, it is quite impressive. And the knuckle bow is fused directly into the pommel, something that I requested for extra strength. The actual grip is, I think it's just plain leather and stitched. You can see there, where it wraps there. Let's move it along. Do a rotation. This is the kind of time where you could do with some useful tool that presumably you can buy on eBay that will just hold the sword and it'll just go. I suppose if you get something you put a kebab on, that would work. And I believe you can see the maker's mark. Where is it? Maybe it's got Santan. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's kind of just hidden. Well, maybe you can see it. I can't quite tell from here, but it's got Santan's mark on it as one of his. I forget what they call it at Kvetun, but they've got a name for their line of custom swords. And if we go on the blade, and even as I'm doing that, I'm realizing this isn't going to work. And all the way. Oh, it's gone out of focus. Come back. Okay, we'll get back to that in a moment. So if I pull it back so you can see a bit more. So you can see the size. A lot of people, when they see a Swiss Sabre, especially this particular one from the Wallace, they assume from the proportions that it's a single-hander. Because if you shrunk it down, it would actually be a really quite sexy looking sabre, you know, single-handed sabre. But this is something a little bigger. You'll notice if I put my hand inside the grip, you can see how much more space is there. I'm going to be careful because I don't want to hit the ceiling. That's with the hands in the grip. You see there's lots of space there, designed to fit something like a 5-finger glove or Red Dragon gloves, something like that. Bring it back down. So I'll just keep it in shot, so it's not just my face that you're going to see as I keep talking. And I think this camera is into like a product mode, so I think it focuses on the item rather than me, which is fine. So we'll just see what happens. So a lot of people wonder, you know, what exactly is this? You know, how do you use it? How does it feel in the hand? Well, the first thing when you hold the sword, or you hold a Swiss Sabre, is it feels probably exactly as it looks. It like a two-handed sword, so just like a conventional longsword with a bit of extra hand protection. And the curve, you don't notice a huge amount until you start cutting. And you're effectively ending up with a fusion of a two-hander and a katana. When you look at the blade, it has a profile very similar to a katana, which reminds me, if we look at the back edge, I didn't say at the start, it's effectively a single-edged sword. Let's have a look, see if we can see that. So the back edge is very thick, especially down in the strong. Look at that. Oh, can't see because of the hand protection. Very thick at the strong. And if we come down, you can see the blade is clipped here, as in the original. And if we come along, it goes to a clipped blade along here. So the last third, maybe just over the last third of the blade, sorry, I'm talking and you can't even see. The last third of the blade is clipped and simulates a sharp along here. So if you swing it, it feels like you're using a standard two-handed sword anyway. With that slight curve, there are a few actions, especially if you like delivering back edge cuts. Let's get this back in shot. If you like using the back edge when you're sparring, then you can, and you'll get some quite interesting angles using that clipped tip. But most of the time, you're not going to be operating vastly differently to when you're using a normal two-hander. Now, one of my actual impressions of this sword as opposed to a Swiss Sabre, because this video isn't about what is a Swiss Sabre. I'll do a separate video on that. This is about this reproduction Swiss Sabre and what is it actually like, things I like, things I don't like, and how to get one. So, what's good about it? Well, the assumption there is that there's something bad about it. So if Kvetun are watching, they're probably going, uh-oh. But first impressions when you look at it is that it's an absolutely beautiful sword. And if you look at it there, it looks like something out of a museum. Now, everybody that's seen it up close or from a distance, they all say what a gorgeous looking piece it is. You know, the blade profile doesn't look like a feather or even a blunted sword. It looks like the real deal. You know, the metalwork along here, it's got faceted edges. It's not just plain rounded steel. The welds are all nice, nice high quality welds. You can't see the welds. They've been ground down and smoothed, so it's all neat. And it's neat on the inside as well. I've had things like Skivonas. In fact, I'll just put this down and try not to throw it on the floor. Let's have a look, what have we got? Okay, ignore the rust, this is due for a clean. But if you look inside, this is a swordsmithy Skivona I've done a video on before, and he basically does the bare minimum on the inside of the hilt. So on the outside, you know, it looks quite nice, but then you look inside and it's got like the bare minimum of sort of cleaning up. But when it comes to this particular sword, there's no part of it where they've skimped. So, you know, you look at it from either side, you look at it on the inside of the blade, it looks all really, really nice. There's a few marks and grease marks on here because I haven't cleaned the grease off yet, because I knew I was doing this video and I knew I'd be doing this horrible thing of holding the blade. So I left the grease on there, which of course means I'm going to get grease on me, but then when I finish the video I can give it a good clean afterwards. Now the blade itself, flex, it's got really nice flex, and if I come back to here, in fact I probably should have started here so you can actually see it. If you look at the flex there, it's not flexing in the middle, it's got a nice flex in the weak. So they really worked hard to make sure that they would get a blade that when you thrust during sparring, you'd actually get something that, that was reasonably safe. Now the tip, it's just a rounded tip. It's basically a rounded, safe tip, but I would never use that for sparring. And they knew that when they did it. It was basically, they've done this for aesthetics, so I can hang it on the wall and it looks like a sharp. When it comes to sparring, I'll tip it, probably bullet case it, and I'll tip it and get it all nice and ready so that it's an actual safer tip. But that's for another day, that's not for today. I'll be putting the dimensions in the video, not in the video, but in the description of the video, so you can know about the length of the blade and the weights and stuff. Now the original Swiss Sabre at the Wallace Collection is 1.62 kilos, which I can't remember what that is in Old Imperial, so I'll pop it in the description as well. Like most people in the UK, we use kind of a hybrid of measurements. I tend to weigh things when it comes to swords in metric, but I measure the lengths of them in Imperial, which I'm sure Nick has probably already talked about. So if a sword is a kilo, I know if it's a light or a heavy sword. If the blade is 36 inches long, I know I can basically judge how that's going to work with a side saw or a rapier just from the Imperial. But I don't use one or the other, just to be really confusing for you. So as I said, 1.62 kilos or 1620 grams for the original, which means that it's primarily, in fact, it can be used as a single-hander or a two-hander. Now, it's obviously restricted if you're going to use it as a single-hander at 1.6 kilos, but it's usable. And if you say you wanted to use it on horseback, you can deliver some quite decent cuts or significant cuts even with a single hand. But it is a little unwieldy at 1.62. The minute you put the second hand in there, let's come around to here, so you bring another hand into position here, then you've suddenly got a nice rotation here. Because there's quite a lot of weight down at the hands, it moves the blade much more quickly than you would expect. I found this with my other Kvetun complex hilt, is as long as there was enough metal here, it would offset the weight in the blade and you'd still be able to deliver quick cuts, just as long as you can handle the weight to start with. Now, because this is a blunt, they added quite a bit of extra weight to it. So I was hoping for something close to 1620, and unfortunately it came out nearly 2 kilos. So this particular sword, I'm gonna do a final check when I finish this video, and I'll pop it in the details as well. But last time I checked, it was around 1920, 1930 grams. So a whisker under 2 kilos. Now that's in the usable category for a two-handed sword. And if you're a beginner to intermediate fencer, I think you might struggle using a 2 kilo two-hander for sparring. And the other issue then, of course, is that you're swinging nearly 2 kilos of metal full sparring. So I am contemplating, I know Kvetun will hate to hear it, but I am contemplating getting some of the metal removed from the blade. But it's something I need to look at, because it may or may not be doable. But in its basic form, I'd say perfectly fine for drill and for sensible sparring. So you wouldn't take this into a competition. You'd go and use a light feather anyway. This will give you no benefits in a tournament. And at 2 kilos and not massively long, you're basically just giving yourself a handicap just to get a better workout. So no good for tourneys. But again, for sparring, if I was going to go and spar with my brother or another instructor from one of our kind of local clubs, like Jordan in Cardiff with the Academy of Steel, I know with those kind of people I can have a sensible fight. They'll get similar matched swords and we'll spar, but we'll spar up to a point. For kind of general sparring, I wouldn't use this, mainly because it's going to take damage. It's going to take damage to the hilt over time. So I want to keep that to the bare minimum. And I also, I'm a little wary of that weight when it comes to sparring. And if you could get it down to sort of between 1.6 and 1.7 kilos, it would change it quite a bit. Now, how much did this cost? That's the really scary part, because you think you can spend 180 to sort of 400 euros or pounds, doesn't really matter, on getting steel feathers or even blunt longswords. And they can be really good as well. Where are my longswords? Oh, they're probably not in shot. Are they in shot? Oh yeah, they are. Yeah, okay. Well, most of them are anyway. All of these here are vastly cheaper and easy to get hold of. So you could get those without much hassle for sort of longsword sparring. Whereas something like this cost me, I think I think the final price is about 1,300 euros, which works out about 1,100 and something pounds. So not cheap. Although the amount of work that's gone into that, you think, how much time did the people at Kvetun spend making this? Well, I would think quite a long time. Just the grinding and the polishing of the guard and the pommel will have been a lot of work, and the blade is something quite exceptional. So yeah, 1,300 euros, and of course it's coming out of Russia. So if you don't live in Russia, you got duty on top of that. Now I got completely screwed by customs, and for some reason they charged me almost 100% on customs. So I'm currently chasing that to try and get my money back, because the Inland Revenue owe me about £600 for overcharging me. But, so we'll see how that goes. So at the moment, my 1,300 euro sword is actually about 2,000 until I actually get my money back. So thanks a lot, customs. But for everybody else, you normally expect, if you bought a 1,300, euro sword, in the UK you'd expect to pay VAT and duty, so maybe around 23% on top. But it depends who's doing it on the day and whether they actually do it properly or not. So not cheap, but I do know they're getting a lot of interest. And if you want basically a sword that's great for exhibitions, so you're putting on a fight for the public, you're looking to get new members, or you've been asked to do a demonstration for something, then bringing along something like this, which is it looks like the original. So it's not a blunted down, cheap sort of munitions grade sword. You're bringing in the kind of things that were saved and kept in museums. Something exquisite, something special. Then definitely go for that. I can definitely recommend it. Kvetun are always a good company to be in contact with. They'll sort anything out, any details you want, any embellishments, which I know is kind of the word in every video. If you want any particular part strengthened, basically you give them the spec and they'll do their utmost to get there. So yeah, great company. And the sword, it's a really nice piece. I'll show you one last time. I'm not quite sure which bit everybody's going to want to see. I suppose everything. So I'll come back as far as possible so you can get a better view. You can see it's big, and it's definitely not a single-hander. As I'm looking at this, I realise I keep looking at the view, the flip-out screen on the camera instead of the lens. So if my eyes keep moving from side to side, that's my fault. I've got to discipline myself to look at the lens. I'm usually the one behind the camera, not in front of the camera, so it takes a while to get used to it. And if I come closer, so this is the outside, so we'll start on the inside. So I've got one hand in the grip, one hand on the blade. I'll rotate around, bring it back. And that's it. So Swiss Sabre, it's a two-handed Swiss Sabre from Kvetun Armory in Russia, based on the original in the Wallace Collection. Around 1,300 euros for the sword. plus shipping and then whatever tax and duty you have to pay. And I have no idea what the waiting time is like now, because Kvetun are making such nice stuff at the moment. Everybody wants their swords, which is good. You know, it's good to be in demand. And one last thing, just before I finish this video. As I said, I'll pop up all the details at the end. But it's also it's also a sword that I used for the artwork for my new book, which I know is a shameless plug, but I'm going to show you anyway, because a shameless plug means I can eat meat this week. So if you look there, that's the cover of my new book, which is about sort of HEMA practitioners fighting undead soldiers from the past. So a kind of a bizarre twist between Army of Darkness and every HEMA event you've gone to. But perhaps more importantly, look at the top. You can see the Swiss Sabre looks rather pretty in the promotional art. So as I said, it's a really nice looking sword. If nothing else, you've got something that is great for promotional stuff. Will always look nice. It'll be a real centerpiece for your collection. You can drill with it, and you can do light sparring with it once you've put something on the tip. That's it. If you want to know anything else about the sword, or if I've missed something and I forget to put it in the description, stick a comment in the comment section, and I will add it. We see every comment, so we try to respond as quickly as possible to any questions you have. And that's it. Thanks for watching.